from the title of the video, you can pretty much guess what today's topic will be about. And yes, I was diagnosed May 23rd with Graves' disease. What I guess triggered this entire thing was me coming down with what I thought was the flu. So I was feeling really bad for like 3 or 4 days. I had a fever, I had tremors at night. I was getting night sweats, and eventually it kind of transformed into me just having an overall general feeling of unwellness, of just not feeling well. And then what kind of tipped me over the edge to finally go to the hospital, go to the ER, was I woke up one night with my heart beating out of my chest. I think when I took my heart rate, it was like at 141 beats, which for me is totally abnormal, because I'm typically resting at between 70 and 77 beats. So that was totally like abnormal for me. And so I decided to go ahead and go to the ER to see what was wrong, because although I felt like this is probably the flu, the flu, it finally caught up with me. I still wasn't totally convinced that that's what it was, even though I felt like I had a lot of the symptoms from the flu, and I've only had the flu one other time in my life. And this kind of sort of felt like that, but then there were some other things that I had not experienced with the flu. Number one, the beating chest, the beating heart, like thumping in your chest, like that was something that I had not experienced with the flu. But then again, I tried to explain it away as, oh, maybe my body's just trying to fight, the infection or whatever the case is. So I checked myself into the hospital. The nurse, I get an EKG. She says, I think it's ectopic beats. You're really fast, but she said, I don't see anything else that would cause concern for me. So that relieved me a little bit. But I stayed there for like 4 more hours. They draw my blood twice. And the nurse comes out and she asks me if she can admit me to the hospital overnight. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, it must be serious if they're trying to admit me overnight. But then I remember, like, my child is at home. So I tell her, like, well, I have to go back and get my daughter. And she's like, well, I can only give you 1 hour. She's like, after 1 hour, we'll have to redo everything and readmit you. And which, of course, would lead to additional charges. So I leave the hospital, I race home, get my daughter, grab her something to eat, and we head back to the hospital. They admit me to the hospital for not 1 day, but 3 days. I talked to an endocrinologist who, on the 2nd day, who then tells me, let's check your blood. We're going to do a sonogram of your thyroid. And so I'm like, of my thyroid? Because at this point, I'm only familiar with hypothyroidism. And I know that I don't have that because I have issues with gaining weight. I have been having issues with gaining weight throughout my life. And so I'm like, it can't be hypothyroidism. I don't have a goiter. And these are all the things that my grandmother had and my aunt. So I'm feeling confident it's not hypothyroidism. But she said they want to check my thyroid and do a sonogram. So I was like, okay, cool. So they do the sonogram, they do additional blood work, and she comes back in and she says, we were trying to determine if it was thyroiditis, which was just an inflammation of my thyroid, or if you have Graves' disease. She says, we are confident now that you do have Graves' disease. So hearing this, I'm like confused, in shock, because for the most part I've been pretty healthy. I try to eat healthy, I exercise, I do everything like I'm supposed to do, basically. Any type of disease was concerning for me, but especially because I was unfamiliar with this. So she goes on to explain exactly what Graves' disease is. Your body attacks your thyroid. For whatever reason, my thyroid is overproducing thyroid antibody, and it is attacking my thyroid. So what I thought was the flu was actually what she referred to as a thyroid storm, which basically is my body dumping thyroid antibody into my bloodstream and just wreaking havoc. And so that contributed to the fast heart rate and all of the other symptoms that I was dealing with. And so like I said, they gave me this diagnosis in May, and since then I've been managing it. It took a while. I'm not gonna lie. It took a while to get it remotely under control. Like, I've been experiencing symptoms since May, and in July is when I finally stopped having a super fast heartbeat. So that was kind of hard, trying to manage a disease when your heart is beating, pounding every day, all day long, is problematic. So it's just very scary. So I decided to come home to California. I had been planning on coming home anyway, but I made the decision to stay a little bit longer because I needed some downtime. I needed to be around family, have that support system. My original 2 weeks has turned into a little over like 2 days, over 3 weeks. And I'm not even upset. I made the decision to relocate back to California. Not only for my physical health and what I'm going through with the Graves' disease, but for my mental health, just because conditions in Charlotte, although I do love Charlotte, and I'm not going to bash Charlotte, I do love Charlotte, it's just certain things are not happening that would need to happen in order for me to properly manage my health. And so the things that I would need are available here in California. There just aren't a lot of holistic options in Charlotte. I'm not saying that there aren't any. There just aren't a lot of options for some of the things that I want to do in order to manage my Graves' disease. But yeah, so I've made that decision. My lease expires August 1st. And so with that being said, I'm going back to move all of my stuff out and basically prepare to get everything back here to California. I've just run the course of my stay in Charlotte, and my health kind of expedited things, but I feel like this is ultimately the best decision for me, just so that I can get better. I need to have a consistent income, something that I was not having in Charlotte. I was living off of my business in California. I wasn't able to physically work, but I still was making some money. But for the most part, the attendants that were working the jobs were making the money, the real money. And so now that I'm back here in California, I can make real money. Real estate just wasn't doing it for me there. I wasn't making enough, and it wasn't consistent. So now that I'm here back in California, I can actually have a consistent income and be closer to the things that I need access to. Again, Charlotte is really spread out, and especially where I was living, it was really far from a lot of things. So I'm taking the bitter with the sweet, and even though there are things in California that I don't necessarily like, there are a lot of things that I do. So I just want to give an update on that, and I'll be back with another video to explain my decision in greater length. But I just wanted to touch bases really quick with you guys because I was supposed to put a video out on Wednesday, but I've been working, and so I didn't get the opportunity to do that. And plus I went to a really awesome CBD meditation on Wednesday night, which kind of hampered me getting my video out, and I'll explain why. For those of you familiar with CBD, you kind of already know what I am referring to, but for those of you who aren't, I'll be back in my next video to explain a little bit more about that. So until then, I will talk to you guys later.